This next stitch is very similar to a running stitch, but it has a slightly different take on it. So you can see I've prepared a needle, and actually I want to use the white one because that's the one that you're going to be using, not the small blue one. So I'm going to rethread this. I'm going to make sure that I keep a little bit of a tail, and I'm making sure that my knot at the very end of my yarn is large enough so it's not going to go through the hole. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to do a running stitch till I get down to here. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to do, and notice I'm pulling all of my yarn through till the knot gets to that hole. I'm going to go back and up, and I'm just going to keep pulling my yarn. And we want to be careful when we have long yarn. One of the things that happens, as you can see, is it can sometimes get tangled and become a knot. We want to keep that from happening. Don't let your yarn get pulled. If you pull on your yarn, you're going to make that knot tighter, and then it's going to be harder to fix. So I'm going to do a running stitch. Now some of you might be able to do this. Some of you, oh, now see, I just ripped the paper, so maybe that's not such a great idea. I'm trying to go faster. So I think I'm better off going down through, then back up, and then pulling. You always want to make sure that your yarn or your thread is pulled all the way before you work on the next stitch. Also notice that I am keeping this yarn over here away so that it's not getting tangled with the yarn over here. Now here's where the running stitch gets to be a little different. So here you have a single strand of a running stitch. Now if you want to make your running stitch just a little bit more complex, watch what I'm going to do. I am going to actually go back, and I'm going to back stitch, and it's going to create it's basically a running stitch times 2. And what it's going to do is, instead of having these spaces, it'll get rid of the spaces. So I'm coming down, and then I'm going to come back up. So this is just a different type of stitch. So when you go all the way around your paper, or when you're done sewing that part, you would just go back and repeat that same, and this is going to look a little bit more where you're going to get more of that straight line, but you're still using a running stitch. Every once in a while, check your yarn to make sure that you're not having any bulk on the back side. My scissors here keep getting in the way, so I'm just going to move those. You also want to make sure that you take enough yarn for the type of stitch that you're doing. Some stitches take a lot more yarn than others, depending on the type of stitch that you are creating. Now, because I already have this here, I am not going to come back up through this last hole there, through that last piece. But I am going to go turn this over, and I am going to go in, and I'm going to go underneath this. I'm going to lift it up. I'm going to pull this through till I get to this end, and I'm going to go through the little loop, and I'm going to pull. That's going to create a knot, and I'm going to do that maybe 1 or 2 more times. And all this is going to do is just going to make sure that my yarn does not come apart. And I just accidentally took the thread off the needle, but that's fine because it's the end anyway. There's my last knot. I can cut, and again, if you'd like, you can tape that little tail to the back of your work. So now you have a running stitch, and then you have a slightly more complex running stitch. So I would call this running stitch times 2. I really don't know what this stitch would be called, but this is called a running stitch. And then this is just making it a little more complex.